I never thought I'd be sharing something like this, but my life unraveled so fast this past week, it almost feels surreal. And since my notes app is overflowing and my one remaining friend is officially over it, I guess I'm bringing the chaos here. So, I met Eric about 4 years ago, not through some cute romantic meet cute, but at a wildlife rehab center of all places. We were both doing community service hours. I was there because of a speeding ticket. He never quite explained what he did. That should have been my first clue. Anyway, we got stuck with the dreaded 3 a.m. bottle feeding shift. Just me, him, and a baby fox that absolutely refused to cooperate. I was exhausted and ready to give up when Eric started humming this strange little melody. And like magic, the fox just calmed down, took the bottle like nothing had ever happened. When I asked him about it later, he said his grandma used to hum it to animals on the farm, that the vibration helped soothe them. Whatever it was, it worked. We talked until sunrise that night, swapped numbers at the end of our shift, and the rest just happened naturally. He used to send me random animal facts, links to nature documentaries, called them required viewing. He was sweet, thoughtful. I won't pretend the next 4 years were perfect. We argued, especially about his mom. She never liked me. From day one, she nitpicked everything. How I dressed, how I wore my hair in a messy bun when I was busy, even how I loaded the dishwasher. And Eric always defended her. She means well, he'd say. You just have to try harder. So I did. For years. I bought her gifts, remembered her birthday, nodded through endless stories about people I didn't know and would never meet. But outside of that, we were solid. We had this tradition where we'd make breakfast for each other on weekends. He made these amazing banana pancakes. I made him a spicy egg dish with avocado that he was obsessed with. We had our shows, our inside jokes. When my cat died last year, he held me while I sobbed for days. He even brought me coffee in bed the exact way I liked it. Oat milk, 1 sugar. Just normal couple stuff. We'd talked about kids before. Someday. Not planning anything specific, just those what-if conversations people have when they feel safe dreaming. He always said he wanted 2. I wasn't opposed. I just wanted to be financially stable first. So when my period was late and I started waking up nauseous, I didn't jump to conclusions. I figured it was work stress. Or a bug. But after 2 weeks of feeling awful, my friend Sandy convinced me to just take a test to rule it out. I grabbed one of those digital ones, the kind that spells it out for you. No guessing, no squinting at faint lines. I took it the next morning. 3 long minutes staring at the bathroom ceiling. Then 1 word, pregnant. Took a second test. Same result. I sat on the floor for almost an hour trying to wrap my head around it. I wasn't panicking, just overwhelmed. We weren't in a bad place. We had jobs, a decent apartment. It wasn't planned, but it wasn't the end of the world either. I figured I'd make him breakfast that Saturday. The eggs he loved, perfectly ripe avocado, just like always. Ease into the conversation. Give us the weekend to absorb it together. But then, the door opened. His mom walked in, uninvited, using the spare key I never should have been okay with her having. Said she was in the neighborhood and decided to stop by, right as I was about to drop the biggest news of my life. Eric strolled out in his sweatpants, kissed me on the cheek, sat down like it was any other Saturday. He and his mom both pulled out their phones. I stood there, heart racing, barely holding it together. Then I just did it. I held out the test and said quietly, I need to tell you something. Eric looked up, and instead of surprise or even concern, I got annoyance, like I'd interrupted a meeting. And then he said it. Well, that's what procedures are for. Just like that. His mom sipped her coffee and added, almost like a punchline, took him long enough to see you for what you are. Nothing special, just a problem now, with a stomach. 4 years. That's all I was worth to them in the end. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just put the test down, wiped my hands, and went to the bathroom to wash my face. I didn't even look in the mirror. I already knew what I'd see. I didn't grab a bag. Didn't take clothes. No laptop, no charger. Just my sneakers, phone, and wallet. I walked out the door and kept going until my legs gave up. No plan. Just distance. I ended up in this little coffee shop I'd never noticed before. Spent 3 hours in the farthest booth, sipping a chai latte I could barely afford. The barista kept glancing over, probably wondering if I was okay. I wasn't, but no one asked. I finally called Sandy, from the bathroom, where no one could hear my voice crack. She let me crash on her floor that night, and the next night, and the one after that. Her apartment's tiny, smells like old cigarettes and cat food, and the pillow she gave me was basically a napkin. But it was better than a park bench. One morning, I overslept. Pregnancy fatigue hit hard. And Sandy, half awake, mumbled something like, "You could at least try not to act like the world owes you." That stung more than anything Eric ever said. She wasn't trying to hurt me. She was just tired too. Of helping. Of me. After that, I stopped checking social media. Couldn't stomach seeing Eric's name. Couldn't see photos of anyone smiling while my world was in free fall. I had only the clothes on my back, so I went to a thrift store. Bought 2 shirts and a pair of jeans. I washed my underwear in the sink at night. Used Sandy's shampoo and toothpaste until I could afford my own. On the 5th day at her place, I landed a job washing dishes at a small cafe. The owner, Vicky, barely looked at me before saying, "Be here at 5 tomorrow." That was it. No questions. Cash under the table. It was rough. My body was already changing even though you couldn't see it yet. I threw up twice on my first shift. Vicky didn't flinch. Just handed me a ginger candy and pointed to the mop. No judgment. Just keep going. I started researching support programs for women in my situation. Booked an appointment at a clinic, just trying to figure out something, anything. That's when the text started. First it was, "Where are you?" Then, "Did you take my hoodie?" Then, "Your mom called." Harmless stuff, until it wasn't. "Are you okay?" "Sandy won't answer." "We need to talk." 20 messages a day. I blocked his number. Then he used his work phone. Then his friends. I blocked those too. Eventually the voicemails came. At first I just deleted them. But one day during a break at the cafe, curiosity got the better of me. I played one. His voice sounded wrecked. He said he panicked, blamed his mom. Said he didn't mean what he said. Said he loved me. That he missed me. Too little. Way too late. I threw my phone at the wall. Screen shattered. Vicky didn't even raise an eyebrow. Just handed me the broom and said, "Phones break, so do hearts, but dishes still need cleaning." I liked her. Sandy, though, she was over it. And I don't blame her. Her apartment is barely big enough for one person. I was sleeping on her floor, eating her food, using her stuff. I tried to pitch in with what little I earned, but it didn't make much difference. I knew I had to move on. Find a next step. I couldn't stay on her floor forever. Couldn't ignore the fact that I was pregnant. And alone. One night after a long shift, I walked into Sandy's apartment, and Eric was sitting on her couch. She looked guilty. He looked desperate. I didn't say a word, just turned and walked back out. I heard him calling after me, heard him running down the stairs. I didn't stop. I ran until I physically couldn't anymore and ended up in a 24-hour laundromat. Just sat there watching people fold their clothes like their lives were normal. Mine wasn't. That's where I am now. Still crashing at Sandy's, but trying to find somewhere else. Still washing dishes, still pregnant, still getting messages from Eric through every possible channel. Yesterday he even sent flowers to the cafe. Vicky threw them in the trash without saying a word. I don't have some big ending for you. No dramatic plan, no epic revenge. I'm just surviving. But I do know one thing with absolute certainty. I'm not going back. Not to Eric. Not to that apartment. Not to that version of me that spent years trying to be good enough for people who never saw my worth. If anything changes, I'll update. And if you're still listening, thank you. Sandy wasn't wrong. I was using her space. I had dragged her into something messy, but I didn't have anywhere else to go. She didn't kick me out that day, but the message was clear. I needed to figure something out. Fast. I nodded. Promised I would. I then headed to the cafe in yesterday's clothes, my face still unwashed, because I was too embarrassed to ask if I could use her shower. When I got there, Vicky barely glanced at me before pointing toward the employee bathroom. On the sink, a clean towel and a tiny bottle of shampoo. I didn't cry, but I came close. I cleaned myself up the best I could, tied my hair back, and started my shift like nothing was wrong. That was the day I finally called my mom. We hadn't spoken in months. Our relationship's always been tense. She's the "you brought this on yourself" type, and I'm the one who always does. Last time we talked was Christmas, and all she did was gush about my cousin Jen. Bought a house, got promoted. The golden child. I was just background noise. Still, I called. From the cafe's back alley. Blurted everything out before she could say a word. There was a long silence. I thought she hung up. Then came the sigh. That disappointed, bone-deep sigh I've known all my life. She said this was typical. me screwing up and coming back for help. Said she wasn't surprised Eric walked away. He didn't. I did. But whatever. She said, I never think long term. Never plan anything through. I nearly hung up, but I didn't. I asked if I could stay with her and Dad, just temporarily, just until I got my footing. She said she'd talk to him, then silence again. She didn't call that night, or the next. On the third day, I got a short text. We talked. It's not a good idea, but if you're really in need, I can help with groceries. Groceries, not housing, not support, just a bag of food. Meanwhile, things at Sandy's were slipping. I tried so hard to take up less space. Ate as little as I could. Stayed out as long as possible. But there's only so invisible you can be in a studio apartment. Then I got really sick. Not the usual nausea. I mean sick. Couldn't keep water down. Couldn't sit up straight. I spent an entire night on Sandy's bathroom floor, sweating, vomiting, crying into a towel so she wouldn't hear. She found me there the next morning, pale, shaking, barely able to speak. And something shifted. She didn't yell, didn't kick me out, just called Vicky and told her I wouldn't be in. Then she made me this old herbal tea her grandma used to brew, sat with me while I tried to sip it. I told her I didn't think I could do it. The whole being a mom thing. I could barely hold myself together. She didn't sugarcoat anything, just said, nobody feels ready, people just figure it out. Even the ones who look like they've got it all down. They're faking it half the time. It was the first real conversation we'd had in days. The sickness lasted almost a week. I lost weight I couldn't afford to lose. Vicky held my job, but I wasn't paid while I was out, so what little I'd saved went straight to crackers and ginger ale. One evening, when I was finally keeping food down, Sandy sat across from me on the floor while I was watching a YouTube video about pregnancy. She looked serious. We need to make a plan, she said. You can't stay here forever. But you also can't be out on the street. So let's figure something out. She grabbed her laptop and we started searching. Shelters, government programs, anything. I'd been avoiding this step, admitting I needed real help. But she was right. We found a shelter across town with a program for women expecting. 6-week maximum stay, but they helped connect you with longer-term housing and resources. Not perfect, but it was something. I called the next morning. They had a bed opening in 3 days. I took it. The next 3 days were a whirlwind. Sandy helped me fill out applications for every support service we could find. SNAP, Medicaid, housing, WIC. I felt exposed, like I was laying out all my failures on paper, but I did it. Vicky let me come back to work even though I was still weak, gave me light duties, made sure I ate something during every shift. One night she even sent me home with leftover soup in a to-go container. The day before I was supposed to move into the shelter, Eric showed up. I was cleaning tables when I looked up, and there he was. Same hoodie I used to borrow all the time. Unshaven, pale, eyes ringed with dark circles. He looked like a stranger trying to be someone I used to know. Before he could take a step forward, Vicky stepped in. I swear I've never seen someone her age move that fast. She got between us, arms crossed, blocking him completely. He called my name, said he just wanted to talk, that he'd been looking everywhere, that he was sorry. But sorry doesn't fix anything. I slipped into the back room and listened as Vicky told him, in her calm, razor-sharp voice, to leave. She told him if he didn't walk out right then, she'd call the police. I heard the bell over the cafe door ring as he finally left. When Vicky came to check on me, I was sitting on a crate of napkins, trying to slow my breathing. She didn't ask questions, didn't push. She just sat beside me for a while. Quiet. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel completely alone. Vicky didn't say anything else, just handed me a broom and told me the front needed sweeping. I got the message. That night was my last on Sandy's floor. She surprised me with a cupcake, some awkward goodbye gesture that somehow meant everything. We split it while watching a trashy reality show neither of us cared about. I told her, I'm sorry I've been such a burden. She shrugged. You weren't a burden, just temporary chaos. That's what friends do sometimes, absorb each other's chaos until the storm passes. The next morning, I packed the few things I had into a plastic shopping bag and made my way to the shelter. It was in a quiet neighborhood, just a regular old house on the outside. You'd never guess what it really was. Inside, though, it was different. Security cameras in every corner, keypad locks, a check-in sheet, rules posted on every wall. No guests, lights out at 9, mandatory meetings, assigned chores. It felt strict, but it felt safe. The woman who checked me in was named Evelyn, probably in her 50s. Calm and no nonsense, reminded me a bit of Vicky. She showed me to my space, a small partition with a twin bed and a dresser. I'd be sharing a bathroom with 3 other women. It wasn't much, but it was mine. That first night was strange. The sound of unfamiliar voices whispering, a baby crying down the hall, someone sobbing quietly behind a paper-thin wall. I lay there on that narrow bed and let myself cry for real for the first time. Not quiet tears, full-body sobs, the kind you bury in your pillow so no one hears. The next morning, I was sitting in the kitchen, staring at a bowl of cereal I couldn't bring myself to touch, when Evelyn joined me. She slid a folder across the table. Inside was a list of resources. A prenatal clinic that worked with the shelter, free pregnancy classes at the community center, and applications for long-term housing. "You have 6 weeks here," she said. "Use them well." So I did. I went to the clinic, had my first proper prenatal appointment, saw the baby on an ultrasound. Just this tiny, flickering shape, but it had a heartbeat. I was 10 weeks along. The doctor said everything looked healthy. I picked up a second job, part-time, early mornings, stocking shelves at a grocery store. Paid better than the cafe, but the hours were brutal. I was up at 4 a.m., then sometimes still working shifts at Vicky's afterward. My body ached constantly, but I was slowly putting money aside. Little by little. Eric kept trying to find me. He messaged mutual friends, showed up at the grocery store one morning. I had to hide in the back room while my manager walked him out. It was like he couldn't handle the fact that I was still breathing without him. Then, 2 weeks into my stay, my phone rang. My mom. Which was strange. She never calls. Just sends occasional cold little texts. I almost didn't pick up. But something told me I should. She'd run into Barb, Eric's mom, at the store. According to Barb, I had tricked Eric, got pregnant on purpose, disappeared to punish him, claimed they were both heartbroken and just wanted to do the right thing. And somehow, my mom wasn't sure who to believe. She asked me outright, "Is that what really happened?" And I told her. Everything, word for word. What Eric had said that morning in the kitchen. What Barb added. How I'd walked out with nothing. Where I was staying. That I was working 2 jobs, trying not to end up on the street before this baby came. There was a long pause. And then she said something I never expected. "I believe you." 3 words. But they felt like 100-pound weight sliding off my chest. She didn't say sorry, didn't offer a place to stay, but she asked if I needed anything. I told her grocery money would help. She promised to send some each week through Venmo. Not a miracle, but something. A start. By week 3, Evelyn called me into her office. There was a spot opening in a transitional housing program the shelter worked with. Studio apartments for women in crisis, 6-month leases, rent based on income. Private, safe, a place to stay through the rest of my pregnancy and even after. I applied that day, interviewed 2 days later, tried not to hope too hard. Meanwhile, the shelter was wearing on me. The noise, the shared spaces, the invisible pressure of survival. But I kept showing up. Because now, for the first time in a long time, I had something to hold on to. A maybe. The constant noise, the curfews, the unspoken pressure. One woman got kicked out for missing curfew twice, another for sneaking in her boyfriend. I lived in quiet fear that I could be next. The clock was always ticking. By now I was 16 weeks pregnant and starting to show. I had to grab some bigger clothes from a thrift shop. My back ached constantly. My feet swelled anytime I stood too long. The nausea had eased up, but now I was always hungry, except I could barely afford enough food to keep up. One day at the grocery store job, I nearly blacked out lifting a heavy case of bottled water. My manager noticed, rushed over, made me sit down, brought me juice, asked if I was all right. I wasn't. I was tired, scared, overwhelmed, and painfully alone. He sent me home early, but I wasn't ready to go back to the shelter just yet. So I sat on a park bench, watching kids play on the swings while their parents stared into their phones. I kept thinking, soon, that'll be me. A mom. The thought hit me like a wave. Too big, too fast. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost let it go. Almost. But something made me answer. It was Eric. I should have hung up. Should have blocked it. But I was too drained to protect my boundaries in that moment. I let him talk. He said he'd been going to therapy. Said his mom had been manipulating him for years. That when I handed him the test that morning, he freaked out. Said he'd been searching for me, wanting to make it right. I just listened. When he finished, I asked him one thing. Did you mean what you said that morning? There was a pause. Then he said, yes. In that moment, I did. I was scared and selfish. But I meant it. I was wrong. At least he was honest. I told him I appreciated the truth, but that it didn't change anything. That I was building something new, without him. I told him I'd reach out when I was ready. But until then, I needed him to stop searching for me. He started to protest. I cut him off. I said, if you respect me, if you mean what you say, you'll give me space. Long pause, then he agreed. Asked if I'd let him know when the baby was born. I told him, I'll think about it. Then I ended the call. The very next day, I got a call. I'd been accepted into the transitional housing program. I could move in the following week. My own tiny studio, not fancy, not big, but mine. Safe. The first person I called was Sandy. She screamed into the phone so loud I had to pull it away from my ear. Then I called Vicky, who just grunted, good, about time. And finally, surprising even myself, I called my mom. She didn't yell or guilt me. She just said she was glad, even offered to help me move. I told her, no, but thanks for offering. The night before I left the shelter, this quiet girl named Skylar, who was there escaping her ex, knocked on my partition. She handed me a small paper bag with tissue sticking out of the top. Inside was a tiny yellow onesie with cartoon ducks on it. The first gift anyone had given me for the baby. I cried. Of course I cried. She gave me an awkward pat on the shoulder and slipped away. The next morning, Evelyn drove me to the new place. I packed my few things, now including one duck onesie, and sat on that shelter bed one last time. I hadn't thrived. I hadn't overcome, but I had survived. Sometimes that's enough. The apartment was tiny. One room, a kitchenette in the corner, a bathroom barely big enough to turn around in. Windows faced a brick wall, but it had a door that locked. A bed that was mine. A table where I could eat without asking permission. Evelyn helped me settle in. There were still rules, but less strict ones. She gave me a small welcome basket with essentials. Soap, paper towels, a roll of toilet paper. When she left, I sat on my bed and pulled out a notebook. I started writing a list. Find a doctor nearby. Look for a better job. Start saving for a crib. Research childcare. Keep pushing forward. It was overwhelming, but I wasn't on someone's floor anymore. I wasn't counting down the days on a shelter calendar. I had time. 6 months of stability to build something that might last. Then my phone buzzed. A message from my mom. She'd sent me $400 on Venmo. For whatever you need. More than she'd ever given me at once. Maybe people can surprise you sometimes. I found a secondhand dresser on Facebook Marketplace. Someone was giving it away for free. Picked up some dishes from the dollar store. Slowly, little by little, my apartment started to feel like an actual home. My mom kept sending money every couple of weeks. Not a lot, but enough to keep me afloat. We talked more too. Still a little awkward, full of pauses, like we were learning each other all over again. One time she even drove down with a bag of baby clothes she'd picked up at garage sales. Didn't stay long. We had a weird coffee at a spot down the street, but it was something, a step. At 20 weeks, I went in for the anatomy scan and found out I was having a girl. The ultrasound tech asked if I wanted to send the photos to the dad. I just shook my head. She didn't push. I sat in the hospital parking lot for an hour afterward, staring at those blurry little images of a baby girl, a daughter. And it hit me. This wasn't just a pregnancy anymore. This was a person. My person. Eric hadn't reached out in weeks. He was finally keeping the distance I asked for. Part of me was relieved. Part of me, embarrassingly, was a little annoyed. Like, after all that chasing, he just gave up, which I know makes no sense. I asked for space. He gave it. And somehow I still felt conflicted. Brains are weird like that. By week 25, things got harder. Physically, my back was a mess. I couldn't sleep more than 2 or 3 hours at a time. Standing too long made my feet swell like balloons. I eventually had to quit the grocery store job. It was just too much. Less income, but my body wasn't giving me a choice anymore. Thankfully, Vicky gave me more hours at the cafe, lighter tasks, mostly prepping food or wiping tables in the back. She let me take home leftovers most nights too, which helped stretch my grocery money. I started meeting some of the other women in the transitional housing complex. Most of them were single moms or survivors of some rough past. There was one woman, Lydia, who lived 3 doors down with her toddler. One day she saw me struggling with laundry and just stepped in. No big conversation, just helped, and kept showing up. Sometimes she'd bring over dinner just to check on me. One night she invited me over and I noticed she had way more baby gear than one toddler could ever need. Turns out she volunteered at a community center that gave out supplies to new moms. The next day she brought me there and they loaded me up. A portable crib, baby clothes, diapers, even one of those soft carriers you wear on your chest. I broke down crying right there in the middle of the donation center. Couldn't stop. Pregnancy emotions hit hard sometimes. And that day, they hit like a truck. At 30 weeks, I got a random text from Sandy. She'd run into Eric at some mutual friend's birthday. Said he asked about me, asked if she knew how I was. She told him I was doing fine on my own. Said he looked rough. I didn't answer, didn't know how to. I'd worked so hard to focus on moving forward that even hearing his name felt like stepping backward. Then, out of nowhere, my dad called. We hadn't spoken in over a year. He sounded different on the phone, like he didn't know how to begin. Cleared his throat a dozen times. Said Mom had told him what was going on. Said he was sorry. That he and Mom wanted to help once the baby came. Maybe visit for a few days, help me get settled. I didn't know what to say. He'd never been the warm type, but this time he sounded unsure. Not judgmental, just human. I told him I'd think about it. I couldn't say yes, but I couldn't say no either. At 34 weeks, I woke up to my phone blowing up. Barb, Eric's mom, had posted a long, dramatic Facebook rant about missing grandkids and selfish women who keep babies from their families. She didn't name me, but she didn't have to. Everyone knew. Screenshots started coming in from mutual friends. And then, this girl I barely knew from college messaged me, saying she was disgusted by the post and asking if I wanted her to drop off dinner sometime. People surprise you, sometimes in good ways. I was furious, though, shaking. I almost fired off a public response. Almost. But I knew that would just drag me into the exact drama I'd worked so hard to escape. So instead, I just blocked Barb. And anyone who liked her post. The next day, Eric called. He started apologizing before I even picked up. Said he had nothing to do with his mom's post. Said he told her to take it down. Said he was embarrassed. Then, carefully, he asked if he could be there when the baby was born. I said no. Told him I needed that time for myself. Told him we could talk about visitation after the birth. If he truly wanted to be a father, not just relieve his guilt, he'd respect that boundary now so we could have something sustainable later. He went quiet, long enough that I thought the call had dropped. Then he said, okay. Asked if he could at least know once she was born. I said I'd tell him after, not during. He accepted that. And we hung up. I thought about it a lot. What kind of relationship I wanted him to have with our daughter. Some days I leaned toward nothing at all. Other days toward shared custody. Lydia told me what worked for her. Treating co-parenting like a business arrangement. No emotions. Just polite, focused communication for the sake of the kid. It made sense in theory. But putting that into practice? That's a whole different thing. At 37 weeks, things changed again. What I thought were contractions hit me around midnight. I was alone, panicked, and unsure, but I made my way to the hospital. Turned out it was just false labor, Braxton Hicks. They sent me home with a warning. First babies often come early. Have a plan. My plan was just me. Me figuring out how to get to the hospital. Me giving birth. Me figuring out everything after that. But Lydia stepped in. She offered to be my person. The one who'd drive me. Stay with me. Be there through it. At first, I hesitated. I didn't want to lean on her more than I already had. But she looked me straight in the eye and said, no one should go through that alone if they don't have to. So I said yes. Meanwhile, time was running out at the transitional housing. By the time my daughter was 3 months old, I'd have to be out. I was on every waitlist for affordable housing. But the timelines were ridiculous. Years, not months. I was saving everything I could from my cafe job, but it wasn't close to enough for a real apartment. My parents were calling weekly now. Still strange, still tentative, but trying. They offered again to come help once the baby was born. I finally agreed, not out of comfort, but because I knew I'd need the help. At 39 weeks and 4 days, my water broke. Of all places, it happened at the cafe. I was helping Vicky close when I suddenly realized I was standing in a puddle. Vicky looked down, then up at me, and just said, well, looks like it's go time. She called Lydia while I stood there in a daze. Lydia was there in 15 minutes, tossing my hospital bag in the back seat, helping me through contractions as we drove. I called my doctor from the car, timing the pain, trying to stay calm. Everything after that was a blur. Labor was not what I expected. Not better, not worse. Just raw, intense, real. 22 hours of pain, fear, adrenaline, emotion. Lydia never left my side. Held my hand, whispered encouragement, stayed calm even when I wasn't. She didn't complain when I squeezed her hand hard enough to leave marks. Just kept saying I was doing great. At 6:17 a.m., after 2 hours of pushing, my daughter was born. 6 pounds, 3 ounces. Full head of dark hair, the tiniest fingernails I've ever seen. They laid her on my chest and she looked right at me, like she knew me, like we'd been waiting to meet. We stayed in the hospital 2 days. The whole time I kept waiting for someone to realize I wasn't qualified, that I didn't know what I was doing, that they'd come in and say, "Actually, we're giving her to someone else." But that moment never came. They gave me forms to sign, helped strap her into the car seat Lydia brought, wheeled us to the front door, and just like that, I was a mom. My parents showed up the next day. It was weird having them in my little apartment. My mom jumped into action, doing laundry, cooking, holding the baby while I took my first shower in days. My dad hovered at first, unsure, afraid to even hold her. But by day 3, he was the baby whisperer. Could calm her faster than I could. I texted Eric a photo and the basics the day after we got home. Just facts, time, weight, we're both healthy. He replied with paragraphs. I couldn't process all of it, so I just said I'd reach out when I was ready. Those first 2 weeks were a fog. Sleep deprivation turned everything to static. I barely remember anything, but my parents stayed for 12 days, long enough for me to feel like I could maybe handle this. Before they left, my dad pulled me aside. He said they had a rental house back in my hometown. The current tenants were moving out. If I wanted, I could live there. Minimal rent, just enough to cover the property taxes. A yard, stability, a place to raise my daughter without rushing to the next solution. At first I was skeptical. I've learned to be cautious with offers like that. But then he said, becoming a grandfather made me realize how much I got wrong as a father. This is my chance to do better. So I said yes. We'd move once my daughter was around 2 months old. It wasn't perfect. It meant starting over in a new place. New doctors, new support. But it meant safety. A yard. Space to grow. The first few weeks were rough. Breastfeeding was a nightmare. It hurt. It didn't work. It left me feeling like I was failing. I switched to formula by week 3. I felt crushed with guilt until the doctor reminded me. Fed is best. Stop torturing yourself. My daughter had her nights and days flipped. Slept all day. Screamed all night. I paced the apartment from midnight to sunrise, watching Netflix on mute, whisper singing lullabies, bouncing, swaying, praying. At 4 weeks, I let Eric meet her. We met at a coffee shop, neutral ground. I got there early, took a quiet corner and waited. When he walked in and saw her, his whole expression changed. He looked at her like she was the only thing in the room. He asked if he could hold her. I paused, then showed him how to support her head and passed her over. He was careful, gentle, silent. We talked, awkwardly, about what came next, about boundaries, about his mom, who he'd apparently been fighting with ever since her dramatic Facebook post, about what kind of father he wanted to be. I told him about the move, about the rental house. He was quiet for a long time, then said he wanted to visit, that he'd drive the 3 hours, get a hotel, show up when I said it was okay. He didn't expect us to be a couple again, just wanted to be in her life. It was the most grown-up conversation we'd ever had. We agreed on a temporary schedule, every other weekend for a few hours. As she got older, maybe longer visits. We'd figure it out together slowly. When I told him her name, Lily Grace, he teared up. Didn't argue about last names, just whispered, "It's perfect." At 6 weeks, Vicky threw me a surprise goodbye party at the cafe. Just a small thing, but it felt huge. The regulars at the cafe came through more than I ever expected. On my last shift, Vicky handed me an envelope. Cash they'd all pitched in, enough to buy a real crib for the new house. I tried not to cry in front of them. I failed, big time. Lydia helped me pack. It didn't take long, still didn't have much. We'd gotten close over the months. Daily texts, venting sessions about diapers and sleepless nights. She promised to visit once I was settled. I really hoped she meant it. The day before the move, I bundled Lily up and took her for a slow walk through the neighborhood. Stopped by the shelter, the one that took me in when I had nowhere else to go. Evelyn was still there. She gave me a real hug when she saw the baby. And then she said, "I'm proud of you." Those words hit harder than anything. The next day, my parents showed up with a rented van. We loaded up the basics, my handful of belongings, Lily's gear, and drove away from the apartment where I'd pieced my life back together from scratch. The rental house wasn't fancy. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, outdated kitchen. But after sharing space with strangers and living out of bags, it felt massive. There was a little backyard with a maple tree, quiet street, neighbors who smiled and brought cookies. It was calm. It's been 2 months since we moved. Lily's 4 months old now. She rolls over, grabs things, smiles at me with this gummy grin that makes the sleepless nights and hard days feel worth it. Eric visits like he said he would. He brings diapers and formula, practical things, not just stuffed animals and photo ops. He gets on the floor with her, talks to her while she kicks and babbles. And when I say it's time to go, he leaves. No argument. There was one bump. His mom tried to crash a visit. Showed up unannounced, standing behind him on my porch. I didn't let her in. Told Eric either she goes or they both do. He told her to leave. That moment? That was progress. Things aren't perfect. I still have hard days. Still cry in the shower sometimes because the weight of it all feels like too much. Still wake up some mornings wondering if I'm getting any of this right. But then I see Lily. This tiny, beautiful little person who exists because I chose to walk away. Because I didn't give up. And I know, without question, that walking out that door 8 months ago was the hardest and best decision I've ever made. I don't know what the future holds. We're not magically there yet. But we're safe. We're together. We're okay. For now. Me and Lily. One day at a time. Thanks for listening, kind strangers. Your support, whether in comments, DMs, or just reading this, has meant more than you could possibly know. I'll update if anything big changes. But if this is the last time you hear from me for a while, just know we're still here. Still standing. Still figuring it out, and that's enough.